Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed we do. It looks like the Cultural Revolution is off. The intellectuals are going to get at least a reprieve from being sent to the iPhone factory to screw in all of the little screws.
For 90 days.
Temporarily, anyway. So, of course, we're going to cover a lot about the tariffs. Show's not 100% tariffs, but it's about 90% tariffs, I would say. We've got Joe Weisenthal coming in to break down what Trump is doing, what it means, market reaction, all of that good stuff. We've got some pretty serious and I think pretty credible allegations of insider trading. So we will break down for you the timeline and the evidence, and you can evaluate for yourself. We got a bunch of, Republicans and administration officials, what they were saying before the pause or the rollback, what they're saying now. It's pretty extraordinary. The president himself being much more honest about the reason that he decided to change course. Basically got freaked out by the bond market. So there you go.
He was a panicking.
He joined the panicans, I guess. I'm really excited for this. We have Ryan Peterson. He's the CEO of Flexport, coming on to talk about also this tariff regime, what it's going to mean, but also, more importantly, there's another change that's coming down the pike that we briefly mentioned the other day that could be incredibly significant and quite devastating to supply chains and to global shipping. So really want to hear from him on that. And then we've got a couple of updates with regard to both immigration policy. Social media accounts are now going to be filtered for any sort of quote-unquote anti-Semitism before people are, given student visas or green card status, things like that. And also we have a quite significant couple of court updates with regard to the Alien Enemies Act. So I wanted to follow up on that since we had that segment with Pisco breaking down the Supreme Court ruling the other day. So to all of you guys who've been helping us out this week amidst a lot of economic turmoil, we have really, really appreciated. We've seen a big spike this week just because of interest in tariffs and what's going on. So if you can become a premium member, of course, we really appreciate it. If you can't do that, totally get it. If you can if you can subscribe, if you can share the videos, that helps us tremendously.
Exactly right. BreakingPoints.com. And for the podcast listeners, we don't forget about you either. As we said, the best thing you can do, leave a 5-star review or take the episode, literally just share it with a friend. It's tremendously impactful. So let's go ahead and start with the tariffs, as you said. The White House, I'm sure some of you have heard at this point, a pause is on. Let's go ahead and put it up there on the screen. Quote, based on the lack of respect China has shown to the world market, I am hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately. That's a retaliation for their 84% tariff that was put into place. There's still some big questions as to that 125% tariff. Does it, in addition to the 20% tariff that were there, meaning it would be, what is that, 155% tariff? That seems to be possible, he says, but this is the most important point. I have authorized a 90-day pause and substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, effective immediately, he says, as a result of more than 75 countries that have called representatives of the United States to express interest in negotiations. So immediately afterwards, there were a lot of questions here. Did Trump cave? Was this his strategy all along? Was he a madman? Was he bluffing? Did he have to convince people he was crazy? Was it the art of the deal? Well, Trump actually answered that for himself. He came out immediately in front steps of the White House, and he's like, yeah, I did it because people were getting afraid. Let's take a listen.
Why you decided to put a 90-day pause?
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, they were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents, they wouldn't have done it. And it had to be done. What was happening to us on trade, not only with, if you look at it, not only with China, but China was by far the biggest abuser in history, and others also, but somebody had to do it. They had to stop because it was not sustainable. Last year, China made $1 trillion off trade with the United States. That's not right. And now I've reversed it. It's for a short period of time, but we made $2 billion. We're making now $2 billion a day. And somebody had to do it. Roger actually said it. Charles Schwab was here a little while ago, one of the great financial people, and he said he's been waiting for 40 years for somebody to do what I did over the last month. Nothing's over yet, but we have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. It's one of those things they don't know quite They're proud people.
People are getting a little bit yippy. That's what the president says. Yet, if you listen to his advisors, this was the plan all along. Here's the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick. Nobody backed off. Absolutely, this was all part of the plan. Let's take a listen.
So, Mr. Secretary, tonight you can definitively say this was not a walk back. This was not something that the bond markets were cratering and you were worried about it.
No.
That this is part of your plan. There's a lot of folks saying there were just mixed messages that really left the markets jittery.
Donald Trump is the best negotiator that there is. He understands how to do these things. And these were crystal clear instructions. No negotiating till 2 days ago. He would be willing to negotiate, but broadly. And then yesterday was, I'll do bespoke. And bespoke, that's what launched it. I mean, every country wanted to come and talk to us. And what are we supposed to do? So Scott and I went in and talked to him about what do we do and how do we do it. And I think this is where we are. So the president made his decision. He truthed it out with Scott and I in the room, just the three of us together. And this is where we are. Scott, Bessent, myself, and Ambassador Jameson Greer, who's our USTR, just have so much work to do with so many different countries. But we've got to make fair deals for America. And Donald Trump said, for the big countries, the lead negotiator of those transactions is going to be Donald Trump. He wants to do it. He wants to drive it. And what could be more fun for Scott and I?
It was not a back down.
What could be more fun, Saagar?
Markets are getting yippy. And so Trump says, we're doing it because people got afraid. Howard Lutnick, all part of the plan. You idiots, never read Art of the Deal. Yeah, there's not a single scrap of evidence to support that. And in reality, all of the talk from behind the scenes was not only that he was not going to negotiate, he didn't care about the markets, and then he comes out and he just says it. He actually undermines all of his big defenders that are in the media. So before we get to the bond market thing, you have anything you want to say?
Well, a couple of just pieces of reporting to add to the context. There are apparently two big things. So first of all, I don't know if you guys saw this floating around, this interview that Jamie Dimon did with Maria Bartiromo.
Yep.
Reporting is that Trump watched that, where he said, I think that we are going to be in a recession because of these moves. Many other people had already said this, and it was like increasingly glaringly obvious. And by the way, odds are still pretty decent that we're going to end up in a recession. We'll put that aside and talk to Joe Weisenthal a little bit more about that. But apparently that, for whatever reason, had an impact on him. And then the real thing was the bond markets. And typically, when you have the stock market fall, you have a lot of people fleeing and buying up Treasury bonds because it's a flight to safety. That's what they call it. Mm-hmm. The very opposite thing was happening here. That freaked everybody out because it's an indication that, first of all, things are so bad, everyone's just having to liquidate everything to make margin calls or keep their head above water. It's an indication of that. It's also an indication, guess what, guys? Maybe the U.S. isn't going to be the safe harbor anymore. So when you have those factors, and then also think about Trump as a real estate guy who is known to use astronomical levels of debt, well, guess what? Your bank loans, the interest rate that you get on that is going to be related to the Treasury rate. So he had a very, long time, deep understanding of how bad this would be for, real estate developers or other businesses that want to borrow money from the bank, not to mention one of the 8D chess theories of what was going on here is they're crashing the economy in order to get the interest rates down. The exact opposite thing is happening. So if you're going to have to roll this debt that the U.S. has, there's this big debt wall coming up, you're going to be paying an even higher price because of these moves that you're making. So in the end, he did join the panic hands and was like, holy shit, this could be worse. And one of the things that was reported, I can't remember which outlet reported this, but he was like, I'm okay with a recession, but I was getting worried that we might be in an actual depression. Yeah. And so he walks back from the edge. Now, to be clear, there's still a very hefty tariff regime in place. I mean, China is our #1 trading partner. So you guys know, so many of our consumer goods come from China. There is an insanely high tariff, 125 or whatever the hell it is, 40%, 140%. On goods coming in from China. That alone is insanely impactful. Then you still have 10% tariffs across the board. If this is what he had originally announced going out to the Rose Garden in that speech, there would have been a massive market reaction because it's actually worse than what was expected going into that speech. But there's a relief because number one, just, it's not as bad as it was. And number two, because it showed that Trump could be moved and wasn't just a total madman going for the next Great Depression.
Yes, that's right. That's an important point, and it actually gets to kind of a market veto. Let's get into this for the bond market before we bring in Joe Weisenthal. Charles Gasparino over at Fox News really broke down the scare in the bond market and why it ultimately forced the White House's hand. Let's take a listen.
I want to tell you right now that Donald Trump outsmarted the world. Trust me, I'm an American. I support my president. But that's not really what happened here, from what I understand. And I know I'll get pushback, but here's what it is. First off, we should point out that one of the good things about this is that Scott Bessent is finally in the White House. He's finally leading this. I mean, up until a couple of days ago, it was Lutnick, it was Peter Navarro, the Commerce Secretary, the trade advisor, very much hawks. Now it's Scott Bessent, who believes in cutting deals as opposed to just just putting these tariffs out there and let's be a mercantilistic economy. That's number one. But number two, let's recall what happened overnight. And from what I understand, and I'm getting this from people that are talking to the White House, what happened in the bond market overnight, the spike in yields on the 30-year and the 10-year bond, which showed that people were dumping our bonds. And who were those people dumping our bonds? Japan, the biggest holder of bonds, was selling bonds. That's what I'm getting from some very big money managers. China, maybe to some extent, but it was largely Japan and others. If you have a mass sale of bonds, that means people are losing confidence in the U.S. economy, on the ability to do deals with us. And from what I understand, this is what forced the hand of this 90-day reprieve. Now, is it a good thing? Are people coming to the table? Yeah. But if you read between the lines, or not even what Scott Bessent said, we have no deals, right? There's nobody that is really there saying, this is what we're going to do. And they paused it anyway. So my thing said, well, I'll give you this. There is some art of the deal here. And by the way, brilliant move by putting China in the corner. But that's a whole separate thing. Because remember, that's a very difficult negotiation. Everybody else is a lot easier. They do want to deal with us. Whether they want to be, forced into really bad trade deals on their end is a whole other negotiating story. But make no mistake about it, you cannot divorce this decision right here from what happened last night, which was, people focus on the stock market all the time. It's the bond market and the sort of lending markets that's the plumbing of the economy. And those markets were imploding last night. And that's why we have a 90-day freeze. Let's see if those markets improve. Someone told me we had a decent Treasury auction today. But if you can't sell your Treasuries, guys, and people are unloading your Treasuries, like Japan, which is, I believe, the largest foreign holder after China.
So as you guys can see there from Charles Gasparino's reporting, the bond market is really what forced Donald Trump's hand, spooked the United States Treasury Secretary, who coming into this had said one of the stated goals was to make sure that the yield on these bonds was going to go lower. That would have, of course, increase in the yield, would have made mortgages more expensive. It would have made the debt servicing more expensive. And it's one of those where the massive size of that and the overall financial impact was a major recessionary indicator. So very, very clear what went on here.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, this is not art of the deal. This was straight up. He got panicked because of the bond market, and now we'll see.
Yeah,
and,
he admits it himself.
Yeah, he said it.
I mean,
I'm not saying it.
And it was funny because Gasparino, that was on Fox.
Right.
Fox News or Fox Business?
That was Fox News.
Fox News. And, it's in the midst of all this North Korea style propaganda about, art of the deal, and this was the plan all along, whatever. He's like, well, not really, based on the reporting, and now based on the president's own words. So let's go ahead and get to Joe Weisenthal of Bloomberg to break all of this down and where we are and what might happen next.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.